Guardaba la ropa limpia. But mi esposo me humilló delante de la familia. Look at el recibo en su chaqueta. You want to know what's really funny about betrayal? It's the paper trail. Credit card receipts, hotel bills, text messages. They always leave evidence. When my husband of 42 years looked me in the eyes at our family dinner and called me a confused old woman who was embarrassing herself online, I didn't cry. I simply reached into my purse and pulled out the receipt I'd found in his jacket pocket while putting away the laundry. The receipt for a diamond necklace I never received, dated on our anniversary. The table went silent. My children's smirks faded. And that was just the beginning of how I took back my dignity and my life. I never planned on becoming what they call an influencer at 63 years old. For 4 decades, I was simply Elena Vasquez, devoted wife, mother of 3, grandmother of 5, and the reliable backbone of our family. I cooked the holiday meals, remembered everyone's birthdays, and listened to all their problems. I was the woman who kept everyone's lives running smoothly, while my own dreams collected dust in the corner. My husband, Roberto, built his construction company from nothing after we immigrated from Mexico in our 20s. We'd arrived with little more than determination and each other. Over the years, his business grew successful, and we achieved what people call the American dream: a beautiful home in Arizona, children in college, and respect in our community. At least, that was the story I told myself. The cracks began appearing after Roberto's retirement 3 years ago. Suddenly, he was home all day, criticizing how I loaded the dishwasher or complaining that I spent too much time with my sisters. Our conversations grew shorter, the silences longer. We moved around each other like polite strangers sharing the same space. Then came my first trembling steps into the digital world. It started innocently enough when my granddaughter Lucia set up Instagram on my phone during a visit. "Abuela, you should post your recipes," she said, filming me as I prepared my famous chili verde. "Everyone would love them." I laughed it off. Who would want to watch an old woman cook? "Trust me," she insisted, showing me how to create an account. People love authentic content. Just be yourself. To humor her, I let her post that first video of me explaining my mother's secret recipe, never expecting anything to come of it. The next morning, I woke to find it had received over 2,000 views and dozens of comments. "More cooking videos, please. Your accent is so soothing. You remind me of my own grandmother who passed. Please keep sharing." I stared at the phone in disbelief. Me? Interesting to strangers? It seemed absurd, but also thrilling. For the first time in years, I felt a flutter of excitement that had nothing to do with my role as wife, mother, or grandmother. Over the next few weeks, I began filming myself cooking traditional dishes, explaining the techniques my mother had taught me. I spoke in my imperfect English, sometimes mixing in Spanish phrases when I couldn't find the right words. I thought my accent would be a liability, but followers commented that they found it charming and authentic. The numbers grew: 5,000 followers, then 10,000, then 50,000. "What are you always doing on that phone?" Roberto would grumble, barely looking up from his television shows. "It's not healthy, staring at a screen all day." "Just talking with Lucia." I'd lie, not ready to explain something I barely understood myself, something that was just for me. When a small cookware company reached out offering $500 to mention their pots in my next video, I was shocked. Money? For this? I nearly declined out of confusion until Lucia explained that this was normal. This was how social media worked. "Abuela, this could be a real thing for you," she encouraged. "But you should probably tell Abuelo." That night, I nervously explained to Roberto about my growing social media presence and the opportunity to earn money. I expected curiosity, perhaps even pride. Instead, he laughed. Not a kind laugh, but the dismissive chuckle he used when one of our grandchildren said something naively ambitious. "Elena, don't be ridiculous. Who would pay to watch you cook? These internet things are scams. You'll embarrass yourself and give away your personal information. Delete this Instagram nonsense before you make a fool of our family." His words stung more than I let show. I nodded quietly, but that night, I didn't delete anything. Instead, I silently accepted the sponsorship offer, filming the next morning while Roberto was at his weekly golf game with friends. That first small payment to my PayPal account felt like a revolution. Money I had earned, not as Roberto's wife or the children's mother, but as myself, Elena, a woman with something to offer the world. Over the next 6 months, my account grew beyond cooking to include stories about my life, my immigration journey, and the wisdom I'd gained over 63 years. My followers increased to nearly 200,000, with brand deals coming regularly. I created a separate bank account for my earnings and hired Lucia as my part-time manager, paying her a percentage to handle the business aspects I didn't understand. Still, I kept most of this hidden from Roberto and my adult children. I would record content while they were away, edit videos late at night, and speak quietly on business calls. It wasn't just fear of ridicule that kept me silent. This new identity was precious, fragile. I wasn't ready to expose it to their judgment. Then came Maria's birthday dinner. Our oldest daughter was turning 40, and the entire family gathered at her home to celebrate. During dessert, my phone chimed with a notification. I discreetly checked it under the table. A major kitchenware brand offering a 5-figure deal for a series of holiday cooking videos. My involuntary gasp drew everyone's attention. "Mom, are you okay?" Maria asked. "Yes, just good news from a friend," I stammered. My son-in-law Diego smirked. "Probably one of those Facebook scams. Mom spends all her time on her phone these days." "What's this about, Elena?" Roberto demanded. The room grew quiet. My heart raced. I wasn't prepared for this moment, but it had arrived regardless. I have a cooking channel online," I explained hesitantly. "On Instagram and YouTube." "A what?" My son Carlos laughed. "Like those teenagers dancing?" "No, I share recipes and stories, and brands pay me to mention their products." The silence that followed was broken by Roberto's harsh laugh. "Pay you? How much could they possibly pay for your cooking videos?" Something in me snapped. Perhaps it was years of being underestimated or the confidence gained from thousands of supportive comments, but I straightened my shoulders and looked him in the eye. "Last month, I made $12,000. The stunned faces around the table might have been comical under different circumstances. "That's impossible," Roberto scoffed. "You're being scammed." "Actually," Lucia interjected, "Abuela has over 200,000 followers now. Her engagement rates are triple the industry standard." "You're involved in this too?" her father Carlos demanded. "I'm her manager," Lucia declared proudly. What followed was chaos. Roberto accused me of lying. My children expressed disbelief that their technologically challenged mother could have a digital following, and my son-in-law suggested I was being taken advantage of by internet predators. Only my granddaughter defended me. "Why don't you show them your channel, Abuela?" Lucia suggested. With shaking hands, I pulled up my profile on Maria's smart TV. There I was, cooking and telling stories, with hundreds of thousands of views on each video. The comments section filled with praise and gratitude. "This is what you've been doing on that phone?" Roberto demanded. "Making a spectacle of yourself online? Sharing our family recipes? Our personal stories? For what? A little attention from strangers?" "Not just attention," I said quietly. "Recognition. Appreciation. And money," he sneered. "Though I doubt it's as much as you claim." I opened my banking app and showed him the deposits. His face darkened. "So this is why you haven't been focusing on your responsibilities at home? To play celebrity on the internet?" "What responsibilities, Roberto? The house is always clean, your meals always cooked. I've never neglected anything." "Except your dignity," he shot back. "A woman your age should know better than to seek validation from strangers. You're embarrassing yourself online, and now you're embarrassing our family." That's when he said it. The words that would change everything between us. "You're just a confused old woman who doesn't understand what she's gotten herself into." The table fell silent. Even my children, who had been smirking throughout the exchange, looked uncomfortable at Roberto's cruelty. I felt a strange calm descend over me. For decades, I had been the peacekeeper, the one who soothed hurt feelings and bridged divides. But in that moment, I realized no one had ever done the same for me. "I understand exactly what I'm doing," I said, reaching for my purse. "Just like I understood exactly what I found when I was putting away your clean clothes last week." Roberto's expression flickered with uncertainty. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the folded receipt and placed it on the table. "You bought a diamond necklace 3 months ago, on our anniversary. $2,000 from Johnston Jewelers. I never received a diamond necklace, Roberto." The color drained from his face. "Were you planning to tell us about this, Dad?" Maria asked, picking up the receipt. This isn't," Roberto sputtered. "It's for Diane Collins," I continued evenly. "Your receptionist for 20 years. I called the jeweler pretending to be her, saying I needed a copy of the receipt for insurance. They were very helpful." The expressions around the table transformed from dismissal to shock. Roberto had been caught, not just in a betrayal, but in his hypocrisy. "I don't need to explain my financial decisions to you," he finally managed, attempting to reclaim his authority. "I worked for decades to provide for this family. And I worked alongside you," I replied. "Raising your children, supporting your business, putting my own dreams aside. But now I've found something that brings me joy and independence. And instead of supporting me as I've always supported you, you mock me in front of our family. I stood up, gathering my things. I'm going to my sister's tonight. Don't wait up. As I walked out, I heard Roberto calling after me, but for once I didn't turn around. I didn't apologize. I didn't smooth things over. I simply left. That night, at my sister Carmen's apartment, I cried for hours. For the betrayal, for the years lost, for the hurt of being dismissed by those I loved most. But when morning came, something had shifted inside me. The pain was still there, but alongside it was a strange, fierce determination. "What will you do now?" Carmen asked, setting a cup of coffee before me. I looked at my phone, already filling with notifications from followers asking when the next video would be posted. "I'm going to keep building what I started," I said, "but I won't hide anymore." That day, I filmed a video unlike any I'd made before. I didn't share the specifics of Roberto's betrayal. Some things still deserved privacy. But I spoke openly about feeling undervalued and dismissed because of my age. "At 63, people think your story is finished," I told the camera. "They pat you on the head and expect you to fade into the background. But what if your most meaningful chapter is just beginning?" I posted it with trembling fingers, unsure how it would be received. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments from women who felt similarly invisible, sharing their own stories of reinvention after retirement, divorce, or widowhood. The video went viral beyond my usual audience, gaining over 2 million views in 48 hours. Media outlets picked it up, calling it a raw and timely conversation on ageism and women's second acts. A producer from a morning talk show reached out, inviting me to share my story on national television. Meanwhile, the situation at home deteriorated. When I returned 2 days later, Roberto had moved into the guest room. He barely spoke to me except to ask when I would come to my senses and act my age. My children called constantly, more concerned with family appearances than my well-being. "Mom, couldn't you have handled this privately?" Maria scolded. "People from church are calling about your videos." "What people think of me is no longer my primary concern," I answered. Perhaps it never should have been. As my online presence grew, so did the opportunities. A cookbook deal, speaking engagements, a collaboration with a major kitchenware brand for my own line of products. Each success widened the gulf between Roberto and me, but also brought new connections and supporters into my life. 3 months after that fateful dinner, my income from social media and related ventures had surpassed what Roberto's construction company had earned in its best years. I hired a financial advisor who helped me invest wisely and protect my assets. For the first time in my married life, I had financial independence. Roberto, meanwhile, grew increasingly bitter. He told anyone who would listen that I had lost my mind and was being exploited by internet companies. He tried to gain my children's support in his campaign against my new career, with mixed success. Carlos and Maria sided with their father initially, embarrassed by my growing public profile. But my youngest daughter, Sophia, began to watch my videos and read the comments. "You're helping people, Mom," she told me privately. "Women write about how you've inspired them to start businesses or leave bad relationships. That's powerful." Her support meant everything, as did Lucia's continued belief in me. But the family remained fractured, with Sunday dinners becoming tense affairs when they happened at all. 6 months after the receipt incident, Roberto delivered an ultimatum. "This internet nonsense stops now," he demanded one evening, "or I'm calling a lawyer." I looked at him across our kitchen island. This man I had loved for most of my life. There was no warmth in his eyes anymore, only wounded pride and resentment. "A lawyer for what, Roberto?" "Divorce," he said bluntly. "I won't be married to a woman who makes a spectacle of herself and disrespects her husband's wishes." I nodded slowly, absorbing the blow. Despite everything, part of me had hoped for reconciliation. "If that's what you want, I won't contest it," I said quietly. "But the internet nonsense, as you call it, is my career now. I won't give it up." The divorce proceedings were painful, but mercifully quick. Roberto wanted to be done with the humiliation as he saw it, and I had the resources to negotiate fairly. We divided our assets, sold the family home, and went our separate ways. I purchased a smaller house near Sofia and began the strange process of building a life alone in my mid-60s. The irony wasn't lost on me that as my personal life crumbled, my professional life flourished. My following grew to over 1 million across platforms. Brands competed for partnerships. A streaming service commissioned a documentary about my journey and the broader conversation about women's reinvention in later life. But success felt hollow without family to share it with. Though Sofia and Lucia remained steadfastly supportive, Carlos and Maria kept their distance, feeling caught between their parents. My grandchildren, apart from Lucia, knew me primarily through my online presence, a strange digital babysitting version of their grandmother, rather than the woman who had once bandaged their knees and baked their birthday cakes. The turning point came 9 months after the divorce was finalized. I was invited to give a keynote speech at a major digital marketing conference about my unexpected rise as an influencer. The organizers had offered 4 complimentary tickets, which I had originally planned to leave unused. But something compelled me to send them to my children, along with a simple note. I would be honored if you could come, but I understand if you choose not to. Either way, I love you. Mom. I didn't expect any of them to attend. The conference fell during a busy week, and the wounds in our family were still raw. I prepared my speech with the assumption I would be facing a room of strangers. The morning of the conference, I arrived early to prepare, my stomach twisted with nerves. Public speaking was still new to me, and this would be my largest audience yet. As I reviewed my notes backstage, an assistant appeared. Ms. Vasquez, there are some people here to see you. They say they're family. My heart leapt, then immediately tempered its expectations. Probably just Sofia and Lucia showing their support as usual. But when I stepped into the green room, all 3 of my children stood there. Even Carlos, who had been the most judgmental of my new path. "What are you doing here?" I asked, unable to keep the wonder from my voice. Maria stepped forward, uncharacteristically tentative. "We wanted to see you speak." "All of you?" Carlos cleared his throat. "Dad showed up at my house last night, drunk, saying terrible things about you." My heart sank. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "No, Mom," Carlos interrupted. "I'm sorry, because I listened to him for months, believing you'd lost your mind or were having some kind of crisis. But last night, watching him rage about your success while he's miserable, it finally clicked. This was never about family dignity or privacy, it was about control. And jealousy," Sofia added. "He couldn't stand that you found success on your own." "We watched your videos," Maria admitted. "All of them. You never said anything to embarrass us. You never even spoke badly about Dad. You just shared your wisdom and found your voice." "Lucia's been telling us this for months," Carlos said ruefully. "We should have listened sooner." I felt tears welling, months of hurt and loneliness threatening to overflow. "It means everything that you're here now." Sofia hugged me tightly. "We're proud of you, Mom. Really proud." I walked onto that stage with a different energy than I'd prepared for. Instead of the defiant story of a woman who succeeded despite her family's lack of support, I told a more nuanced story of growth, forgiveness, and reconnection. Reinvention isn't just about finding new purpose, I told the audience. It's about renegotiating relationships and creating space for everyone to evolve. Sometimes the people who love us most struggle the hardest to see us change. But with patience and clear boundaries, reconciliation is possible. As I spoke, I could see my children in the front row, really listening perhaps for the first time. Carlos wiped tears from his eyes more than once. Maria nodded along with points that resonated. Sofia beamed with pride. After the standing ovation, we went to dinner as a family. Something we hadn't done since that fateful night with the receipt. The conversation flowed more easily than I'd dared hope, catching up on grandchildren's milestones and sharing stories from our separate lives. "There's something else we need to tell you, Mom," Maria said as dessert arrived. "About Dad." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "The woman, Diane. She left him," Carlos explained. "Apparently, she was more interested in his money than a long-term relationship. He's alone now, and not handling it well." I nodded slowly, processing this information. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in Roberto's pain. "He's asked about you," Sofia added carefully. "Not directly, but he watches all your videos. Lucia caught him once on her laptop. He's too proud to admit it," Carlos continued. "But I think he misses you, and regrets what happened." I took a sip of water, considering their words. "I've forgiven him," I said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to a situation that diminished me. I wish him healing and happiness, but my path is different now." They nodded, understanding in a way they wouldn't have months before. As our evening concluded, Maria hesitantly brought up a proposal. "We were thinking, Mom, what if we did some family content together? Not to exploit our story, but to show how families can heal after conflict. It might help others in similar situations." I looked at my children with wonder. "You'd want to be part of my online world? If you'll have us," Carlos said. "Better late than never, right?" That conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter for our family. We began with small collaborations, cooking videos where I taught my children recipes they'd grown up eating but never learned to make themselves, behind-the-scenes glimpses of grandchildren's birthdays, honest discussions about our painful period of estrangement, and the steps we took toward healing. These family videos resonated deeply with my audience, bringing a new authenticity to my content. Viewership doubled, then tripled. Brands were eager to associate with our multi-generational message of growth and reconciliation. A year after the divorce, I launched the Second Chapter Foundation, a nonprofit organization providing digital literacy training and business grants to women over 50. The cooking channel that had begun as a simple connection with my granddaughter had evolved into a platform for meaningful change. We hired staff, established partnerships with women's organizations, and began hosting workshops nationwide. At the foundation's launch gala, I was overwhelmed by the turnout. Hundreds of supporters, media, business partners, and most importantly, my complete family. Even my grandchildren, too young to understand my work, sensed the significance of the evening, on their best behavior in their formal attire. As I prepared to give my speech, I noticed a familiar figure lingering near the back of the ballroom. Roberto, in a suit I'd never seen before, looking older and somewhat diminished. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and he gave a small, hesitant nod. I nodded back, neither warmly nor coldly, simply acknowledging his presence. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year, communicating only through lawyers and occasionally our children. My speech that night wasn't about triumph over adversity or sweet revenge. Instead, I spoke about the courage to begin again at any age, the power of authenticity, and the unexpected paths that open when we follow our passions. None of us know the full story of our lives until we're living it, I told the audience. The chapter you thought was your epilogue might actually be your prologue. The relationships you thought were permanent might evolve or end. The skills you never valued might become your greatest assets. But through it all, the constant is your own voice, if you have the courage to listen to it and let it be heard. After the applause died down and the formal program ended, I circulated among guests, accepting congratulations and discussing future initiatives. Eventually, I found myself face-to-face with Roberto in a quiet corner of the ballroom. "You look well, Elena," he said softly. "Thank you. So do you." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, weighted with history. "Your speech was good," he offered. "Very moving. I'm surprised you came." He looked down at his hands, twisting his empty ring finger where his wedding band had been for 4 decades. "Carlos invited me. I almost didn't come, but I wanted to see what you've built." I nodded, waiting. "It's impressive," he continued. "The foundation, your following, everything. I was wrong about what you were doing. About many things." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Roberto, this admission was significant. I could see the cost to his pride in these words. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I miss you," he blurted suddenly. "The house is empty without you. Nothing tastes right." I felt a pang of sadness for what we had lost, but also clarity about where we stood now. We had 42 good years, Roberto. I don't regret them, but this is my life now, and I'm not going backward. "I understand," he said, though disappointment clouded his eyes. "Can we at least be friendly, for the children's sake?" I considered his request. "I think that's possible, with time. Small steps." As we stood there awkwardly, Sophia approached with her phone. "Mom, we're taking family photos for social media. Can you come?" I nodded, then glanced at Roberto. "Would you like to be in a photo with the grandchildren?" Surprise and gratitude flickered across his face. "I would like that very much." That photo, Roberto and me standing with our children and grandchildren, became the most liked post I'd ever shared. Not because of the professional lighting or coordinated outfits, but because of the authentic story of imperfect reconciliation it told. The comment section filled with stories from followers navigating their own complex family dynamics, finding hope in our example that healing was possible even after deep wounds. In the 2 years since that gala, my life has transformed beyond recognition. The Second Chapter Foundation has helped over 500 women launch businesses or second careers. My cookbook hit the New York Times bestseller list. I've given a TEDx talk on digital reinvention after 60 that's been viewed millions of times. My relationship with Roberto has evolved into a careful friendship. We'll never be married again. Those bridges were thoroughly burned, but we can share holidays and grandchildren's milestones without tension. He's even appeared in a few cooking videos, the two of us showing that collaboration is possible after conflict. Last week, I received news that still seems surreal. Forbes magazine will be featuring me in their 50 over 50 list, highlighting women making impact in their later years. The same week, we hit a milestone of 2 million followers across platforms, with engagement rates that make marketing professionals scratch their heads in confusion. Your audience is so loyal, my now professional management team explains. They're not just viewing content, they're building a relationship with you. That's rare and incredibly valuable. As I sit in my home office reviewing analytics and planning content for the coming month, I often think back to that moment at Maria's dinner table, when Roberto called me a confused old woman, and I pulled out the receipt that changed everything. Had I found that evidence a year earlier, I might have hidden it away, too afraid of disrupting our family's harmony. Had I confronted him in private, he might have convinced me to forgive and forget, to maintain appearances. But finding my voice online had already begun to change me before I found that receipt. I had already started to value myself in a way that made accepting disrespect impossible. Sometimes I wonder, was finding that receipt a tragedy or a blessing? The end of one life or the beginning of another? I've come to believe it was both. Painful endings and hopeful beginnings are often the same moment, viewed from different perspectives. What I know for certain is that at 66, I am more financially secure, creatively fulfilled, and genuinely respected than at any previous point in my life. The woman who once feared being a burden in her old age is now supporting others and creating generational wealth for her family. The woman who once apologized for taking up space now commands stages and boardrooms. Not because I discovered some extraordinary talent late in life, but because I finally gave myself permission to be seen and heard exactly as I am. If you've stayed with me through this story, perhaps you're at a crossroads of your own. Perhaps you too have found evidence of betrayal, or felt the sting of dismissal from those who should value you most. Perhaps you're wondering if it's too late to begin again, to find your voice, to demand respect. Let me assure you, it is never too late. The very moment you decide your story matters is the moment your next chapter begins. And speaking of beginnings, this channel is approaching an important milestone of its own. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, which would allow us to expand our content and bring more stories like mine to light. If my journey has resonated with you in any way, please consider subscribing. Your support means everything to small creators sharing authentic stories that might otherwise go untold. Because ultimately, that's what connects us. The courage to share our truth, to stand in our power, and to rewrite the narratives others have written for us. One video, one day, one brave decision at a time.